Welcome to the Cafe Culture podcast, a season of discussions on culture, politics, philosophy and science.
At a talk recorded on the 20th of July 2015, Jason Ellis discussed the causes and solutions of sleep disorders.
Thank you. Thank you for an invite to talk here. This is my first time talking. Not talking. I've been talking since I was at least 5. I was very late. Anyway, let's start. How many of you sleep? It's a great question, isn't it? If you don't sleep, how many of you don't sleep? Oh, okay. I need to see you 3 in my office tomorrow. You'll be fine. Don't panic. It'll be fine. We'll get you sorted. Okay. Second question. I'm going to read a proverb, and somebody can tell me the end of the proverb. By nature 5, by custom 7, by weariness 9, by laziness 11. It's a proverb about how much sleep we need. According to the old proverbs, we only by nature need 5 hours sleep. Oh, good, says someone. Well, it may not actually work out that way for you, but okay, we'll start with that. Another proverb. 6 for a man, 7 for a woman, 8 for a fool. What do these 2 proverbs have in common? They've got numbers in. What they both suggest is that short sleep is good. Long sleep is... Oh, you are a fabulous audience. I love you already. And what we can see from that is history has taught us through proverbs, through culture, that short sleep is good for us and long sleep is actually bad for us. Now, if we look at Disney, for example, and we talk about Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, and we talk about Sleeping Beauty, what happened to both of these delightful young ladies when they crossed an old witch? They were put to sleep. So in this instance, sleep was punishment, wasn't it? They were made to sleep. They were made to miss things. Again, it talks about this need for long sleep being bad and short sleep being good. And we can see this translates even further into the Grimm fairy tales. Jack and the Beanstalk. What happened in Jack and the Beanstalk? When did the egg get stolen? When the giant was sleeping. Again, sleep is seen as a bad, negative context. Now, I'm here to change that. I'm going to talk to you about why sleep is actually good for you. Yes. So we can throw out all of those myths and all of those folklore and talk about why sleep is actually good. But before I'm going to do that, I'm going to tell you what sleep is and why we do it, because it's quite important to know what it is. So what does it look like? What does sleep look like? Now, some of you, I know, have slept with another individual. You've got the look. It's a look I know well. So, how many of you have slept with a partner? At least once. That's okay. You don't have to go further than that. What do you notice? How do you know that they're asleep versus awake? What physical characteristics do they show? Snoring. Okay, let's go for something else that doesn't cause discord. Slower breath. Absolutely. That's one of the signs of somebody who's asleep. Do you know why we have slower breath? Because our lung capacity reduces by 2/3 when we actually sleep. The capacity of our lungs decreases quite significantly so that we can actually lie down flat and still breathe. Well, what else? What other things do we see when we see somebody sleeping?
Closed eyes.
Closed eyes. We call this, because we're scientists, quiescence. Quiescence. Closed eyes and being quiet. In essence, no snoring. The other thing that humans tend to do is we tend to lie down. So when we're asleep, we tend to lie down with our eyes closed. Now, the reason that sleep has had quite a bad reputation in the past is because generally we haven't really been able to talk about what it does, what its actual function is. We just do it. Well, what we did discover in the 1950s is that sleep is actually made up of several different processes. These are known as the stages of sleep. So, we all get into bed, right? How many of you get into bed? It's good. Sleep is good in a bed, not good in a hammock. Hammocks are bad. And futons, but we won't talk about that. So we get into bed. Now, how many of you get that really warm, cozy feeling? You get a really nice, warm, cozy feeling, and then you get a jump. Like you stepped off a pavement just too quickly, and you go, ooh. What's happening is our brain is slowing down. We're going from what we classify as being awake to actually going into stage 1 sleep. In stage 1 sleep, our brain waves start to get slower. We start to slow down a wee bit. The jump that you get, and this is called the hypnopompic jerk. So there you go, a hypnopompic jerk. And what that is your body, when it's going to sleep, it doesn't need cortisol. It doesn't need all of those hormones that keep us awake. And so what the body does is it tenses up all of the muscles and releases them very quickly. It's like trying to get rid of all of the energy at once. And that is the jerk that you get as you descend into what we call stage 2 sleep. Now, stage 2 sleep, our brain waves are getting much slower, but it's characterized by 2 very particular things. What you'll see is if you're looking at somebody's brain waves when they're in stage 2, you'll start to see something called a K complex. Now, as a brainwave, it should be nice and slow and very rhythmic. And then suddenly, it'll have a jerk. And the jerk will look like a big K. And that's called a K complex. And then following a K complex, what you should then see is something called a sleep spindle. And the brain wave just goes very, very fast for a very short amount of time. And this is known as stage 2 sleep. Now, we spend about 45 to 55% of our night in stage 2 sleep. So you get off to sleep, you have your jerk, and then you spend the majority of the night in stage 2 sleep. Up until very recently, we didn't really think that stage 2 sleep was there for any other reason than just to help us to get into some of the deeper forms of sleep. But recently, we've started to understand that the K complex and the sleep spindle actually provide a very specific function. So the K complex, the wonderful K complex that we see, what we now know is that that is a period whereby we do something called sensory gating. And so imagine this, you're in bed, madam, you're in bed, not with me, you'll never get any sleep. You're in bed, you're going to sleep, and then suddenly the next door neighbours start having a party. What's it going to do? It's going to wake you up. But what the brain does is it creates a big spike in our brain waves. And it's almost like Darren Brown. It says, don't focus on them, focus on me. Don't think about them, focus on me. And so what it does is it allows us to carry on sleeping even though there might be noises that are occurring out in the environment. And these noises or these intrusions can also come from inside as well. So any of us who are suffering from pain, for example, we can keep being asleep, we can stay asleep because we have K complexes which tend to focus away from the pain and allow us to carry on sleeping. So it's quite an interesting thing, it's quite an important part of the brain cycle. Now the sleep spindle, beautiful thing. It looks very like a little sawtooth. Again, up until very recently, we really didn't know what the sleep spindle was for. We thought it was just some aberration, just something that happened. But now what we know is that the sleep spindle performs an actual function. And that function is to turn short-term memory and get it ready to be turned into long-term memory. So when you go to bed at night, all of the things that you remember that need to go into your long-term memory, like my lecture, you will remember me, either good or bad or indifferent, you will remember. All of those things that you need to remember, they get transferred from our short-term memory and get ready to be put into our long-term memory through sleep spindles. So if we deprive people of sleep spindles, or we deprive people of K complexes, they're more likely to wake up in pain, and they're more likely to forget the things that they were supposed to remember yesterday. So if you want somebody to forget something, deprive them of stage 2 sleep. And that's going to become important when I talk later on, okay? So just keep that in the mind. All right, so we've gone from stage 1, we've got into deeper stage 2, 45% of the sleep we get is stage 2, and then we go into stages 3 and 4, together known as slow wave sleep. Now, this period of sleep is the most important to regenerate the body. It is the only time that your immune system is actually working at 100% capacity. When you're not feeling very well, when you feel a bit poorly, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to go to sleep. And the reason being is the body craves slow wave sleep. You need slow wave sleep in order to regenerate the body. And during the period of slow wave sleep, what we tend to do is we tend to reduce all of the capacity of the body. So the body tends to stay quite still and quite quiet, and it allows us to release hormones. And these hormones have 3 main functions. And the first function is we go out and we kill cancer cells. So we have cells which are killed during the night, only during slow wave sleep. The second are necrotics. What they do is they go out and they hunt out dead cells. So they're cleaners. So we send in the cleaners. And the third cells that we have are anti-allergens. So when we have allergic reactions in our body, these cells come out during slow wave sleep and they then fix the allergens. They kill all of those allergic reactions. That only happens during slow wave sleep. The other thing that happens during slow wave sleep is something that we refer to as growth hormone. It's the only time you grow. You only produce growth hormone during slow wave sleep. So what we can see is that stage 3 and 4, slow wave sleep, actually has an amazing capacity for the human body. It's restorative to the human body. So you've done stage 1, 2, bit of 3 and 4, then you'll go back up into stage 2. It's very odd. We go 1, 2, 3 and 4, then we go back up into 2. Why would we do that? Anyone want to suggest? Why would we go back into a light phase of sleep after we've hit a very heavy, deep form of sleep?
Can I make a wild guess?
Oh, treat me to a wild guess.
So that the processes and substances involved in the stages subsequent to 2 can regenerate, ready for the next bout.
That's a very interesting point. It hasn't actually been studied, but it's a very interesting point. What we actually believe is that it's part of our evolution. So that we go through very deep forms of sleep, and then we have to go into a light form of sleep to check the environment to make sure it's safe. Is it safe? Is the mountain lion coming into the cave? We check our environment, and then we're allowed, if everything's fine, to go back into deep sleep. But we don't go into deep sleep. We head into what we call REM, rapid eye movement sleep. What happens in rapid eye movement sleep? What happens in REM? dreams. Actually not true. Ah! But it is sort of true. If you're dreaming in colour, you're in REM. If you dream in black and white, you're in stage 2. Ooh, everyone's sitting there going, oh no, what was... I can't remember. It was a little bit off-white. What does that mean? So we hit REM. Now, REM, we traditionally have talked about in terms of our dreams, and most of our dreams do happen in REM. But REM actually provides a very vital function for the brain. During the day, lots of toxins fill up to the brain. They pass through the blood-brain barrier and they fill us with these toxins. It's during REM that we clean out the toxins in the brain. And so REM actually has a very distinctive function to normal brain processing. And that's why we can see a relationship between very short amounts of REM and lots of neurodegenerative disorders such as dementia and Alzheimer's. So we pass through all of these stages. We have a dream, nice little dream. We'll do stage 1, 2, 3 and 4, back up to 2, then REM. And then we do it all over again. 2, 3 and 4, 2, REM. And we cycle all the way through the night. We do this every 90 minutes. So you get a sleep cycle is about 90 minutes in duration. Okay? Beautiful. That's the sleep process. Now, sleep disorders are basically down to one of 2 factors. We'd call the first one the circadian rhythm. So does anyone know about the circadian rhythm? It's the body clock, the 24-hour body clock. And this is regulated by the release of 2 distinct hormones. One of them, melatonin, that helps you go to sleep. And the other one, cortisol, helps keep you awake. And we regulate these throughout the day and night to try to keep us into a biological rhythm of 24 hours. Now, unfortunately, the human body clock is not 24 hours. The human body clock is 24.25 hours. So we are actually aliens on this planet. We have come from somewhere with a bigger moon. War. Now, so because of that, we have to use external cues in order for us to be able to keep to the 24-hour society. So the cues that we use are light. So light will come, hits the retina, travels down the optic nerve, and tells a part of the brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, release the cortisol. And we release cortisol, keeps us awake. And then when we hit darkness, the darkness hits the retina, travels through the optic nerve, and it says, release the melatonin. And that puts us to sleep. And we regulate these 2 processes right the way through the day. But there are 2 very distinct points. The first point is 4 o'clock in the morning, known as the nadir. Your body has finished producing melatonin. It's had enough sleep. You actually start getting ready for your day at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we stop producing melatonin and we start producing cortisol. The opposite happens at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you actually start putting your gym jams on. You're getting ready for bed. How many of you get that feeling of, oh, you know, I could just roll under my desk and have a good couple of hours around 4? It's because your body temperature is at its absolute highest and suddenly it starts to cascade and get cool really quickly. And it's that cooling that makes us want to go to sleep. There's a key point. If you want to get good sleep, cool. Bedrooms should be cool because the body needs to cool down. So one of the things that we talk to patients about a lot is about 2 hours before bedtime, if you don't fancy a good exercise, and as you can tell, I don't, what you can do is have a nice warm to hot bath. Because what it does is it brings the body temperature up really, really high and then cascades to cool very, very quickly. And that helps us get off to sleep. Okay, so that's the circadian rhythm. The other part of our sleep is known as the sleep homeostat. And the sleep homeostat's a bit difficult to try to explain, or at least for me. So I like to use my favourite thing, food. How many of you eat? Fabulous. How many of you like a buffet? Oh, I love a buffet. I absolutely adore a buffet. If I was sat in front of a buffet at breakfast, I would just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. You'd never see me again. Now, on the odd occasion that this has happened, where I've been invited to a buffet at breakfast, what happens at dinner time? I'm not hungry anymore. So I usually get a slap because, you know, I've been cooking all day and look at that, you're not hungry anymore. So think about it this way. When you get up in the morning, your levels of hunger are at their lowest and they start rising and rising and rising, and then you'll have something to eat. Boom. Then they'll start rising and rising and rising again. Lunch. Boom. Rising and rising and rising and rising. Dinner. Boom. And so that's the homeostat of food. And this is regulated by hormones such as leptin and ghrelin, hungry and full. And so what you can see is that spike of going hungry, full, hungry, full, hungry, full. Exactly the same thing happens with our sleep, but it only happens once. We get sleepier and sleepier and sleepier and sleepier and sleepier throughout the entire day, and then eventually, boom, we'll go to sleep. And so if you deprive somebody of sleep, what's the thing that they're going to do eventually? They're going to sleep. And when they sleep, the interesting thing is the sleep they get is full of slow wave. So if you deprive somebody of sleep, the sleep they get is generally slow wave. They reduce the amount of REM they tend to get during the night. Now, all sleep disorders come down to a problem either with the circadian rhythm, the sleep homeostat, or the interaction between the two. So let's talk about insomnia. I do like a bit of insomnia. Insomnia, the inability to get off to sleep, to stay asleep, or if you wake up too early without needing to. I'm just looking for confirmation. Is that insomnia? I'm sure I studied it somewhere. So that's the basis of insomnia. Now, insomnia, we classify if you've had insomnia for 6 months. So anywhere after 3 to 6 months, you will get a diagnosis of chronic insomnia. The reason that it takes 3 months is because actually insomnia, in its first period, so in the period from about 1 or 2 nights to up to 3 months, is actually an adaptive response. It's actually good for us. Now you're listening and thinking, what is he talking about? Why would not sleeping be good for us as an organism? What causes insomnia? What's the thing that sets off insomnia? Oh, stress, that old chestnut. All right then, stress. The organism is under a period of stress. What does the organism not need to do when it's stressed? Sleep. Think about it this way. An axeman comes through. It happens quite regularly here, I understand. Axeman walks in here now. How many of you think, oh, you know, I'll just have a little nap? Go do your business, I'll be fine. The adaptive response of the human system is to run. That is what stress does. It releases much more cortisol into the system. And so what's the one hormone you don't need? Melatonin. So actually, insomnia during its acute phase is adaptive to the human system. it becomes maladaptive because of our own behaviour. The things that we try to do to compensate actually are the things that can be very detrimental. So what sorts of things do we tend to do? What do we do when we have insomnia? Can't sleep at night? Ooh, lie in. Oh, the lie in. Think about the homeostat. So we've got the homeostat, yeah? Beautiful block of homeostat. Now, sorry? Eat. Bad. Sleep and eating, bad. Okay, we've got a block of homeostat. This is our normal natural sleep threshold. And you think, after a few nights of poor sleep, you know what, I'm going to have a lie in. So we stretch the homeostat. What about going to bed early? How many of you have gone, oh, I'm so knackered, I'm going to go to bed early. I'm going to go to bed early. And how many of you have had one of those things called a nap? The nap. Suddenly, we've stretched the homeostat. Now think about the homeostat as a piece of pastry. The piece of pastry homeostat. So you've stretched your pastry. What happens to pastry when it stretches? It breaks. It gets big holes in the middle. And those become our awakenings. We start to awaken during the night. We can't get back off to sleep. And then we can't get off to sleep. So insomnia, generally, when it becomes chronic, is more about how we manage our behaviour around the bedroom. How do we fix insomnia? What's the one easiest way to fix insomnia? Okay, you've got this big pastry with big holes in it. Squish it back together. And so we do something called sleep restriction. It sounds absolutely bizarre. I can't sleep, so what are you going to do for me, doctor? I'm going to stop you from sleeping. What am I doing? I'm squishing down the homeostat. And so what's the one thing, if you think about the homeostat, it's going to build and 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 build. You've got no choice. You're going to be out like a light. So we restrict the amount of sleep you get so that the sleep that you get is immediate and condensed. That's the basis of insomnia. Now, I've chatted for probably far too long. Have I? I probably have.
No, you're
Have I?
absolutely spot on time.
I'm open for questions, open for business.
Cafe Culture North East is supported by Newcastle University, Peels and the British Science Association. We're also supported by Ginger's Cafe in Dance City, who host the events.